Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. So welcome to this video. Welcome to this channel. My name is Laura. This is Pleiadian Healer from PleiadianHealer.com. And today we're finally going to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a little while already. Some people have requested this video, so I hope it helps in clarifying matters. We're going to talk about the Taking Your Own Life program and how it could be affecting people, how it has affected people in the past, but this could be coming up right now for people with the hardships that have been going on over the past 2 years or so, or longer even. And I personally do know people who have tried to take their own lives and also actually taken their own lives. I'm going to talk about that in this video too, and what my findings were interacting with the energetic side to it, because there's obviously more to the story than just the physical act of doing it and everything else that goes into it. But we're going to start off. So I think it's just easier for me to share the screen with you while I'm talking about it. Now, I actually don't want to mention the words, like the second word right here in this video too frequently, because, you know, there's always a programming behind words as well. And plus, I don't know how the censorship works on this channel specifically, but you guys know what we're talking about. Let's just put it that way. So I'm just going to refer to it as people taking their own lives or deciding to end their lives. And it is a program. How they are taking key players out of the game is the subtitle to it. So what exactly is going on when someone is in a situation where they don't want to be alive anymore, or when they're just like, okay, I'm going to end it now? There are several different reasons for it. I'm sure there are thousands of reasons why people would want to do so. And every case is obviously very specific to that person and their circumstance and situation. But overall, what I've gotten on it is there are a few major things that run into it. So we're going to go through some of the most major points that could be influencing a person to act that way, or at least to have the thoughts to, because, you know, just because you have the thoughts of doing it doesn't necessarily mean you are going to do it, but it's probably one of the first steps that they're implanting into your head, and that they kind of want you to take that action towards ending your life in your current incarnation, and they want to take you out of the game, call it video game, whatever. So there are different scenarios why people would want to end their lives, but I know there are certainly children, and well, maybe not children, but there are teenagers, like young adults out there, you know, age 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, who have certainly considered it. When I was a teenager myself, I actually went to a school where a girl who must have been around 15 or 16 years old at that point. I think she was like 16, but she actually tried to take her own life by jumping off of a balcony that was part of the school. And it didn't work out in her case. I didn't really keep in touch with her or anything after, so I wouldn't necessarily know what's going on with her nowadays. But I do know it definitely happens for younger adults, like teenagers, for sure. And in that case, I kind of feel when you're so young and you're already having those thoughts and the urge to do it, it's kind of part of the remembrance of the lightness of how it feels when you're on the other side. So obviously you're incarnated right now in this physical body and everything. And especially if you're older already, you know, you've gone through childhood, through teenagehood, through all of that, you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. The more you're in this flesh suit, this flesh body, I feel the more you're getting used to it, the more you're getting used to your own body, the way you look in the mirror, all of that. So you might not remember as clearly as when you were a baby, a child, or a teenager, even, because that's basically when you were, you were just born and everything, how light it could have felt on the other side before you were born and reincarnated here. And I do strongly believe, there is a lightness to it, whether or not you're going through that incarnation trap or whatever. Once you're out of this body, there are reports of people just saying it's literally like getting up from one chair and going to the next chair. So you're literally just floating around. Your soul never dies. Your soul is never able to be destroyed or anything. There's such. Which is why the fear of death is also another iffy thing, right? Because like you're never really going to die. It's just like you're going to change incarnations or you're going to go somewhere else. So some of these younger teenagers who have those thoughts could be remembering on an energetic level, on a soul level, how light it felt on the other side and how dense and dark and just too much it feels like right now. And those are also the years when you really go through a lot, right? You go through hormonal changes, you go through friends that kind of turn against you, you have your first heartbreak with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever. So it can be very tough to be a teenager, no matter at what era you were born in. And so some might really remember, oh, it felt so nice, like kind of like, what would it feel like if I were just to die young or just kind of end it right now? And there is kind of, if you look at the Shakespeare Romeo and Juliet story, for example, there's kind of this over romanticization of, because they were very young, they were like 14 or 16, or I don't even know, it depends on who interprets that story and which theater play, obviously. But they were very young and they were basically dying, right? Like she kind of stabbed herself and he kind of, it was a misunderstanding. Then he took his life with poison and everything. So there is this over romanticization of dying when you're young, before you turn old and before, you're not attractive anymore, or you kind of have gone through life and forgot about your true soul essence. So I think when you're so young and you feel that plays a huge role into that too. Some people could legit have a fear of getting older, but I really feel, and this is another point, that with these people, a lot of them actually had shorter lives in other lifetimes, in other past lives. So if someone's at a very young age, let's just say 12, 13, 14 years old, and they're already contemplating to end it, most likely in a previous past lifetime, they have died very young, or they've actually taken their life already. And I feel that's true for a lot of people who are contemplating it, no matter at what age you are. But if you're thinking about it, most likely you've actually done it in a previous lifetime, meaning that soul imprint is carrying over in your DNA, in your soul, to this lifetime. So also maybe you were killed in a previous lifetime at a very young age and everything. And that's why you're like, oh, I'm already 16 years old. I'm already 20 years old. I shouldn't even be alive anymore, because you weren't really alive in a previous lifetime, if that makes sense. But the most drastic reason, because those are smaller reasons that come into play. The most drastic reason, though, is there are entities around you really firing you up to have that thought and to really act on it. I don't want to say it's an entity possession. That's taking it to the next level. Some people have entity possessions too, but I'm not sure they would actually, well, maybe some of them would, take their own lives under it. But I feel there are actually these dense entities around people who are still fully able to be in their body and their physical vessel. And these entities really want to take you out. And so I want to go ahead and share a different screenshot here and share the story of Kevin, who is an inspirational speaker at this point. So Kevin Hines, survivor, storyteller, filmmaker. He is based in San Francisco, and he actually has his own YouTube channel too, Kevin Hines. You can look him up. This is one of his videos. He's doing a documentary, suicide, the ripple effect and everything. So this is his story. I think I came across him like 2 years ago or whatever, was featured somehow on one of the social medias. He's basically telling the story of him jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, which only 19 people have survived, by the way. Which, I mean, I'm sure more people have jumped off it. So not a whole lot of people have survived that fall because it's so deep. And he's basically telling the story how, like in the middle of his fall, which only lasts a few seconds, obviously, he was thinking, what am I doing? You know, like why am I doing this? And he was completely confused. And then before that, he was basically reiterating how there were voices in his head trying to tell him, just go, just jump, just jump, just jump. No one cares about you. Just jump, jump, jump. And so what I read into that, because I'm coming from the energetic and psychic perspective, is that he had entities around him trying to make him jump and take his own life. And his story actually makes a whole lot of sense because he grew up, I don't know if it was foster care or whatever. It seems like he grew up without his parents by his side. He was kind of pushed from one home to another. He had bipolar disorder. He had a whole lot of other mental health disorders. He was under the influence of drugs. I don't know if that meant street drugs or, you know, more like the psychiatry drugs they push into you. But he had a whole lot going on already. And when you take these kind of drugs that are supposed to treat depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, by the way, it is a form of entity possession that can take you over. Now, once again, I'm not a doctor, not a medical health professional. This is just my own opinion I'm sharing on it. But I have seen it with clients in sessions that there's implants that are being put into people, like especially around the tongue area, the mouth area where they take the medication. And entities can actually come through with these psychiatric drugs. And street drugs is a whole nother ball field that, I mean, we don't really have to discuss in this video, maybe a different video. But this is a young man. I mean, he was born in 81. So at this point, he would probably be 40 something years old. This is really an inspirational speaker who shares his survivor story. And that's another thing, you know, I really feel when you're not meant to leave yet, there are going to be forces around you that are really going to try to save you from something. And that kind of happened in his case. So he fell from this huge, massive fall, the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. There was a dolphin or something that rescued him somehow, I feel, or there was something around him. He could see dolphins in the water. And then there was a boat nearby, and you know, there something like, I don't know, like it was this miraculous story where he wasn't even severely injured. Like he could have hurt his back severely, but somehow the right doctor was present in the emergency room to help him out in the right time. So, you know, I do feel the universe is going to conspire and make things happen for you to get out of this somehow, if you're really not meant to go. And I really feel there are these protective forces around us too, that are going to do the best they can during this lifetime to kind of offer a form of protection to us. Now, if you're just someone who contemplates taking your own life for every 5 seconds and you're really set to do it, obviously there's not a whole lot they can do. Eventually you're going to succeed. But in this specific instance, I really felt you could see very clearly there was something that was, you know, protective, something around this person. So you can read up on his story. I might link his website in the description box. And back to the other share. So that was a very clear sign of entities around him. I don't want to say entity possession, but entities around him trying to animate him to do it, because I'm not sure exactly how his story goes, but it doesn't seem like he was trying to do it beforehand already. It literally came out of nowhere somehow. It came out of a broken home he grew up in and everything. The entities around you firing you up to do it, that's a huge one. Do not underestimate this point at all. If you're dealing with a friend, if you're dealing with someone, or if you yourself are under the influence of this right now, because you really have to start noticing what are your thoughts and what are the thoughts of the entities around you that want you out of this game. And I know it can be very hard to differentiate between those two, because at one point it seems like they're going to take over, or it's all just negativity around you. It's not something, but this is a huge one, that there really are things around you that want you out of this game. So let's go through a few more points here. There's also other instances like dealing with loss and conflict, like financial hardships and everything that a lot of people might have been dealing with during 2020, 2021, and 2022, perhaps. I feel it's just another edge to the game they're putting to us, make everyone bankrupt, have everyone deal with inflation and all of that, and people losing their jobs in 2020 and beyond. So dealing with that, maybe some people don't see a different way out. This is also another good point. The energy of the land you're on can be very dense and dark. Where I grew up in a specific part in Germany that was, called it the karma of the land, call it whatever. It was under the influence of World War II still. There's actually to this date still bombs on either side of the forest around the area where I grew up, and you're not supposed to step on those because they could accidentally explode or whatever. But there's a lot of pain and loss and all of that occurred in the area I grew up in, just because of the wars they had. And I'm sure they had other wars before that too. That's kind of how the energy of the land works. A war doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes because the karma of the land already carries that imprint with it somehow. So World War II didn't come out of nowhere. Like the areas that were really affected, those were under the influence of the 30-year war, perhaps, in the medieval ages, and so on and so on. You can probably lead it back to the Romans and everything, and even before that, because a lot of stuff happened during the Holy Roman Empire too. And where I grew up, we were actually still part of that, because parts of Germany, like we actually had old Roman roads still and everything. Parts of Germany definitely still have that. So when the person, because she wasn't really a friend, but when that one girl tried to take her own life by jumping off of a balcony of a school that I was attending, that school was actually a very dark and dense, energetically dense school. Every single one of my family members ended up switching after a few years because it was just very dark and mean and everything. The teachers were mean towards the students. The energy just felt ridiculously hard to sift through. I don't think it was a cloister, but it was something with, of course, something with church and nuns walking through the corridors like 100 years earlier. So there was a lot. Maybe they put a whole bunch of religious spells or something on that place. I have no idea, but that school was very intense, and there was a lot of stuff that happened in it, like drug dealing and those kind of things that make me believe to this point that there was something going on that kind of wasn't sitting well with the students and also teachers. So when that one girl decided to do that, it wasn't a huge surprise that it happened in that school, because I felt the energy of the land and the energy of the school was already like so not great at all. But of course, it also happens in other areas. So that's just one aspect of it. I do think the entire program of wanting to end your own life, they are trying to get to kids and teenagers through video games, through TV shows, through stuff, like the Shakespeare romance and novels where people are dying early, all of that. Just the over romanticization of wanting to die young. So mostly I do feel it has to do just with the entities surrounding you and really trying to get to you. Are they doing it with every single person out there? No, they're really trying to get to the people who are the key players, who can really make an impact and make an influence in this video game of life in the Matrix. And so what's the point of that? Well, if you die young, you're not going to gain the same spiritual awareness or strength, perhaps, or wake up to the same amount that you could once you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old or whatever, right? Like we used to live thousands of years, and we used to live at least a few hundred years, back in the days. And then they kind of decimated us to, oh, you're going to die when you're 50, you're going to die when you're 60, 70, 80, all of that. So we used to be so powerful that, just imagine what you can do when you live 1,000 years in one lifetime and how many lives and souls you can actually impact. So when they try to take you out early on as a teenager or a young adult or whatever, for whatever reason, and implant these thoughts into your head, oh, maybe it would be good if I just kind of disappeared right now because my life is too tough, or I lost my best friend, or, you know, I'm under this hardship, all of that. When they have you at that point, they want the key player out, because basically you can't do a whole lot from the other side. You know, once you're dead and on the other side, whether or not you think you might get out of the matrix or whatever, you know, if you're here right now, we've gone through the reincarnation, so most likely you haven't gotten out of the matrix yet. But when you're on the other side, you can't impact much, right? It's kind of like being up in the air, up in the sky, and observing the people below you. You're like, oh, it's nice. This is a nice viewpoint. I have an overview of what my city looks like. I have an overview of what this area in the world looks like, but you're not in it and you're not playing in it. And that's kind of similar to what you do when you're playing here, even though the veil is down and everything, and you're maybe not as psychic as you are on the other side. It's similar to that. So you need to play in this video game to make an impact, and just trust, you know, whenever it is your time to go, you will go, and that you've done the best to your extent during your time here and everything. And I'm not meaning, okay, you're just going to decide to end it right then and there. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is, you know, people die through the most bizarre reasons, right? Like they can die from age, or they can die through an accident somehow. So you really just got to trust that, you know, whenever it is your time to go, you will go, but you're not going to do it by, you know, just deciding to take your own life or whatever. Now, there are instances where, you know, people decide they want to do euthanasia or whatever because they have this cancer or a different disease. Those are other scenarios. I feel at that point, people have probably already given up on their lives to such an extent that the disease manifested in their body to such an extent. That's a bit of a different scenario, but I feel for most people watching, that's not really the case right now. Okay. So the case really is that some people might have these thoughts and you're wondering where are they coming from. So there are a few reasons in this video that might give you a bit of an overview. And I know it's very hard, you know, once you're at that point. I know anxiety, depression, all of that plays a huge role. And maybe you don't see a whole lot of hope to continue, but I think there's always something to be hopeful for. You could maybe put yourself a goal list you want to accomplish in the years that you want to be alive, you know, visit Mount Everest, or do something nice for this and this, you know, it's just anything to keep you going. But just remember, you know, there are entities around you that want you out, and that's the main reason you even have those thoughts, because not everyone has those thoughts. You know, a lot of clone bodies don't have those thoughts. A lot of soulless beings, robotoids, don't have those thoughts because they're just here to fill in the background. They're not here to make an impact. Another thing that plays into it is that you should consider the trauma that a person leaves behind when they take their own lives, the trauma that they leave behind for their family or their friends or whoever they were close to. The amount of pain a parent must feel that their child decided to end their life must be unmeasurable, honestly, or like a sibling would feel, even though it's not their fault. Obviously they're gonna feel it's their fault, you know, so you should definitely consider that too. Needs to be considered in this equation. What I've noticed, so I actually had a friend's relative take their own life because they had a disease that they were suffering from for 20 plus years. And it got to their brain, it got into their head, and they couldn't deal with it anymore. So they actually took their own lives. And what I saw when I tapped into it is that their soul was actually so traumatized from doing that, because the soul knew it wasn't time to go yet, that it was basically lost in the in-between space between now and there. So it hadn't crossed over at all. It was kind of just ghosting around, spooking around somehow. It was very traumatized. So the soul trauma that can happen too, like you might be thinking, okay, I'm in control of my life, I'll just end it whenever I want to. Boom, your soul might have such a traumatic experience from that. And in this person's case, they actually took their own life with a gun, by the way, which must be very traumatic for the soul and everyone who even found this person. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like to find your child with their head blown off, right? I mean, just thinking about it. Anyhow, the soul was so traumatized, it was kind of stuck here. So I actually had to go in and push them through that white light. I didn't know better back then, but I just pushed them through so that they go somewhere, because the energy of the house where they had done the act was so heavy, it was really impacting everyone who was still living there. And after that happened, the energy was much lighter. This person reincarnated again in the same family as a child. So that can happen too. There's a lot of things that play into it. I'm not a huge fan of, the church saying, oh, you're going to go to hell when you try to take your own life, all of that. I think there's a different program that's working through the church thing. Okay. I just want to put that out there too. It's just meant to confuse you more, because hell in and of itself doesn't really exist. If you believe it exists, yeah, you might spend a few seconds there until you move on to the next part. But it doesn't, I mean, the underworld exists, all of that, sure, but it's not like the church is telling you it's your own doing. No, I don't believe in that at all. But it is very true that your soul experienced such a trauma that you can be stuck somewhere that you weren't planning to be stuck, So that's another thing to consider. Now, it can also happen to certain people who had a car accident that was very traumatic and just happened out of nowhere, those kind of things. So it doesn't just happen when you take your own life, but those are the instances where I have seen it. The main reason, I guess, is, think about that's what they want, how they are taking key players out of the game by people doing that. There's always something to be grateful for, to look forward for in life, at least in my opinion. And I know it's hard when they're really trying to get to you, but you're also not the only one they're trying to do that to. So maybe there are help groups, whatever, out there. I know there's hotlines for this. I'm not really sure what they do, but on a soul level, I think these are the main reasons. And I hope it helped. Thanks so much for watching. If you have anything you want to share, you can. And talk to you very soon. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful one.